Okay. Right now, I'd like to show you one of my favorite podcasts. It's a sad, depressing story about a pathetic coyote who spends every waking moment of his life in futile pursuit of a sadistic roadrunner who mocks him and laughs at him, is repeatedly crushed and maimed. I hope you enjoy it.
Right now is the time for me to leave everything I know behind. No more lies.
I'm stumped.
That's from UHF, a Weird Al movie.
Oh, I have not seen.
Couldn't think of anything.
UHF.
I mean, I've seen UHF a lot.
Yeah, that was.
I was thinking Fantastic Mr. Fox or something.
Deep cut there. Deep cut.
I thought it would be
deep
Wes
cut,
Anderson because it was Joshua. So I thought it might be.
Well, Weird Al just won a bunch of awards this week for his fake life story Weird, which I would love to see, but it's on. Yeah, it's on Roku. I have Roku.
I saw it.
Do you?
We just have a Roku. I mean, like we have a Roku, so we have the stupid Roku channel.
That's like one of the few services I don't have.
Is that the one with Daniel Radcliffe?
It's only on Roku. Yeah, totally.
You don't pay for it though. You just buy a Roku and then that's it.
Well, that's paying for something, isn't it, Craig? If I have to buy it.
It's like $10.
Well, none of us found the marble in the oatmeal.
I actually watched that. I watched Weird, but not UHF. I have not seen UHF, but I've seen Weird.
It's on our list, so we will get to it at some point. Yep.
I gotta say, the nerdiest people I know are always like, UHF, you've never seen UHF? I'm like, no, I've never seen UHF. So I must place you among the nerdiest people I know because those are the only recommendations I get about that movie.
It's funny.
Well, listeners, I'm Joshua, and I have with me two upstanding citizens, workers, patriots, who have filled out all the required paperwork, including Form 977-6, A and B, gotten it stamped in the appropriate spot, and are now ready to submit their opinions to us here at the Department of Information Retrieval. Hello, Citizen Brian.
Greetings.
Hello, Citizen Greg.
Hello. I'm from Central Services, and I think this podcast has been bypassed.
Well, friends, welcome to another edition of your favorite podcast and mine, Rabbit Fighters. Today we're discussing Terry Gilliam's. Is it Terry Gilliam or Terry Gilliam?
Gilliam.
Is it Gilliam? It's not like GIF or GIF?
It's not like GIF. Terry GIF. Terry GIF's favorite movie.
Terry Gilliam's Weird Wild Ride of a movie, Brazil. This came out in early 1985 in the UK and France. It's clearly inspired by the book 1984. It's been voted one of the greatest British films of all time by the BFI, British Film Institute. Like in the top 100, not like top 5 or anything like that. It was mired in controversy, which threatened to delay its U.S. release until the end of 1985. And it has just a fantastic cast. Jonathan Pryce, the Robert De Niro, Kim Greist, Catherine Hellman, Mona from, Tony Danza show? Who's the boss?
Mona! Angela! Samantha!
Jonathan.
None other than Bilbo Baggins. Ian Holm is in this.
It's really that's who he's known. Bilbo Baggins. He was like 70
known in my household.
It's his defining role.
Is in Brazil and Lord of the Rings.
An alien. He was so much more than. Well,
he was great in Alien, but man,
Royal
he was a great Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah. Especially when he went cuckoo. When he wants the ring and he's like, "Rah!"
Super Mario Brothers, Bob Hoskins, and Michael Palin.
Super Mario Brothers, Bob. What a man.
Michael Palin from A Fish Called Wanda.
Yes. Not known for anything else other than that.
That's
movie.
it. That's all. 2 movies.
So Greg, you've seen this movie in the past, and Brian, you had not until like an hour ago. So,
yeah, I'm coming in hot.
Yeah, what are our thoughts on Brazil, guys? How do you want to tackle this one? This one's it's a beast.
Well, do you want to summarize it, Joshua? Do you want to try to do the plot, or tell people?
I could.
What the hell the plot is? Right?
Brazil is this sort of crazy dystopian view of not even the future. It's sort of like an amalgamation of all of the 20th century condensed into one place and time. It's this Sam
Lowry.
Thank you. I've seen this movie a million times. I can't remember these things. Sam Lowry, played by Jonathan Pryce, is this sort of low-ranking official in a forgotten department in this overarching global behemoth bureaucracy that's dysfunctional, and it runs everything. And he doesn't dream of much. He has no ambition. He's kind of happy where he is. There's a sort of Big Brother-esque sort of government that's sort of watching everybody and everything, and you need a form to do anything. And so Sam's a part of this machine. He doesn't dream of getting out of it, but then he starts having dreams of this dream girl, and he escapes in his at night, and then he wakes up and goes back to his job. There is a very minor mistake in some paperwork. A fly ends up getting killed in a typewriter, which changes a T to a B, which results in the arrest and later murder of an innocent civilian because they think that he is Archibald Tuttle, played by Robert De Niro, sort of anarchist HVAC guy. Who's guerrilla fixing people's heaters at night, and Archibald Buttle, who is kind of a nobody, just a family man. So they arrest Buttle.
He's a cobbler. Don't just say he's a nobody. Noble profession.
But that doesn't stop the police, the man, from crushing him like a bug. They arrest him, they cart him away, terrorize his family, and then the lives of Sam Lowry and their neighbor, who happens to be his dream girl, intertwine as she tries to be a good Samaritan and figure out what happened to her neighbor, Archibald Buttle. As Sam tries to figure out the mystery and get closer to his dream woman, and then he gets wrapped up in the bureaucracy and takes a promotion to get more information on her, and then he just gets more and more entrenched and eventually kind of accidentally sides with the opposition and those anarchists, and and then the movie takes kind of an even darker turn. How's that?
That's pretty good. I mean, it's a very hard film to summarize quickly. It's a lot of.
At the beginning, you said that he is he doesn't have really dreams and he's content with where he is. I would argue with that. Where I think this is a story about a dreamer trapped in a bureaucracy. The first shot you get of him is in a dream, and then you get a shot of him in bed, and these giant wings on. He's basically Icarus flying close to the sun, and he's
fantastic makeup.
It's the only time in the movie that you see him seem content, seem like of himself, seem like he is who he should be when he's flying in his dreams, and when he sees this woman in his dreams. And when he wakes up, you see behind him this poster that says screenwriter. And then there's like movies. There's these generic movie posters of like glamorous old movie starlets, And that's the
40s,
first look.
50s.
Yeah, that's the first look you get at this guy. But his head is next to this gnarled like knot of shitty cords and wires and crap, and so there's this juxtaposition of this dreamer in his bed who gets woken up at the beginning by his boss being like, where is he? And then and all these things have malfunctioned, and then you get this like Pee-wee Herman and Pee-wee's Big Adventure style Rube Goldberg thing where he wakes up.
Totally.
And for me, it was like how these artists all had to leave the old Soviet Union, because this is 84, 85. It's like the height of the Soviet Union. It's really like a Soviet style system that these people exist in, I'm sure he was lampooning the US and the UK and stuff like that. But like the posters, the imagery, the slogans, the buildings, everything was fascist or neo-fascist looking. And you have this guy who is an artist who just wants to soar with his dreams and love, and he's just stuck, and there's no outlet for him because there isn't that role in that society. There isn't an artist, there isn't a dreamer, there isn't a role for that person. and therefore he is meant to be crushed.
That's an interesting kind of angle or viewpoint. But I guess my question to you would be he wakes up, goes through this whole routine. He actually gets to the office, right? He goes and he has a codependent boss, AKA, Bilbo.
Yeah.
That needs him for everything, because he's this little impish man and whatever. Yeah. So, but he also has a wealthy mother, right? So his wealthy mother is continually trying to get him promoted and out of this position, that everything. But he seems he states that he's entirely content. And, I don't want promotions. I'm happy. Let me do what I'm going to do. So it's kind of interesting. How do you put that? I mean, is he lying then? If he's content, doesn't want promotions. He doesn't want to be put out there. He doesn't want more action in the machine. But when they go to work, all these people want to do is watch movies. So as soon as the bosses go away, they turn on movies and watch movies because their job sucks so hard. But he's I just want to be a bean counter because there's no pressure. There's no, I'm a reclusive dreamer type, I don't want to be out there, glad handing, shaking hands, getting promotions, trying to
yeah. And he gets enough glory from his boss who can't do anything. and he's in his little domain there. He's the king. Exactly. He can fix any problem. He's brilliant at it. He doesn't need to excel any further.
He is at least needed.
Yeah. So he would have stayed there forever, ostensibly, if it weren't for the typo that happened and the worlds kind of colliding, where they arrest Archibald Buddle, which is a terrifying scene when you first see it. I love that part where they cut the perfect circle in the ceiling, and you can see the layers, the stratification of tubes that make up these government houses, and just falls straight through. The jackbooted thug police all come in, throw a giant body bag over his head. The pencil pushers come in and read him his rights, sort of, but then it's all just contracts receipts, and invoices and forms receipts that she has to
make the screaming.
This is your receipt for my receipt.
Screaming, traumatized wife. Yeah, she's sign here and here, and that's what I like what they do with all the hoses and shit. It's supposed to be a futuristic movie, sort of, but it's also really analog. He says it's of this time, but it's also supposed to be some undisclosed place and time, basically, like Star Wars, a galaxy far, far away, who the hell knows when and where. It doesn't really matter.
It's just like here.
But he creates this world where basically these people are all living in the guts of this giant robot, or this giant automaton. It's like cutting through the dermis of someone's skin. You see all the shit underneath these layers that people live in. And it really, to me, was they're living in the intestines of this giant robot.
I think that's a funny point too, that this whole thing is patchwork together with hoses, but nothing fucking works.
Yeah.
So
right.
It's nothing works as it's intended to, and it's all just malfunctioning and all the time.
That's poking fun at the Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union, that kludgy, everything is just sort of duct taped together. But it's officially duct taped together. That's just what they have on hand. And that's, that's kind of the Terry Gilliam style. You see that in 12 Monkeys. You see that in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Time Bandits, Baron Munchausen. He's very good at constructing these places that just look slapdash together, but just a ton of thought went into putting that particular thing there, that little hose there, that little doodad there. I love that.
Yeah, but when the Soviet Union crumbled, everyone was shocked at how quickly the mafia took over and basically just ran the country underneath the guise of the government. And everyone was shocked at where did this come from? And I remember reading about people who lived there that said, hey, look, the Soviet Union was so dysfunctional for so long. The only way you got something done was by going through the black market. And I always thought of Tuttle as the black market, HVAC guy, right? There's always a black market guy that gets there fast, can do it actually well, leaves, you pay him off or whatever. But everything that was competent was being run in the black market, and
there's so much about this movie that there's just so many little tiny details that jump out at you at times. I've seen this, I don't even know how many times. And for the record, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Maybe, I don't know about top 5, maybe top 10. I don't know. But it's up there. And I've seen it so many times, and every time I see it, I see something new. So this time, the thing that I saw that I was whoa, I never noticed that before, was the nuclear power cooling towers with
the guy banging on the top with the homeless guy.
Yeah, the homeless guy, but the camera shot comes up. It's got the nuclear cooling towers, but they're painted with fake clouds.
I noticed that. Yeah,
to make them more like
is that
appealing.
what they were? I didn't know what they were.
It was just that it fed into that whole we're just sort of taping over, putting the duct tape over everything that's broken and trying to make things look a little nicer, but not really.
It's like that,
'cause we don't have much of a budget.
That billboard that keeps reappearing with the happy people on it or something, where it's kind of it
falls in. Then all the highways are lined with billboards because nature has been completely obliterated outside of it.
I think that's.
So yeah, it just falls into that whole aesthetic.
It's one of my favorite scenes when he meets his mother, shows up and she takes him to this French restaurant, and the maitre d' there speaking French, and he's making him pick the numbers for the food, and it's just this Jello blobs or something. I know. And he's like, steak, say the number.
I know. I love it when he makes him say the number.
Yeah. It's like pictures of the food, and the pictures have a number, and he won't say the numbers.
I need you to say the number. You must say it. 3, 2, 3.
And then the just says it immediately, and it's just scoops of goo.
Yeah, it's horrible looking, pre-digested slop.
But they put the picture of the food next to the goo, so you know what you're eating.
Salt.
And he's like, steak is not rare. He's like, Jonathan Pryce, it's not rare. I'm like, it's like dog food.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yeah, it was colored dog food.
Yeah.
I also like the really bizarre obsession with plastic surgery that they have, right?
Yeah. Everyone trying to stay young, and hyper consumerism, and all the plastic surgery stuff was kind of funny. They all look all rubbery and weird, and just
his mother. And I didn't know that was Jim Broadbent. That was the mother's plastic surgeon. I love that fucking guy and everything. Most of the movies that he's in, I never recognize him. And then the credits roll, and I'm like, that was Jim Broadbent? Oh, no wonder. He was fucking incredible.
He was good.
And he's so young in this too. So I just didn't recognize him at all. And when the credits rolled, I was like, Doctor Who? Oh, the fucking plastic surgeon. Oh my God. And I watched it again and was like, oh man.
I like the dueling plastic surgeons with two very different philosophies on how to conduct. There's the acid guy, and then there's the cutting guy.
The little guy.
And there's this beef between
the little guy that does the acid. Terry Gilliam loves working with him. So he's in Time Bandits. He's in a bunch of other movies too. And then that lady who is slowly turning to dust.
It's decaying
every time.
Everybody. It's awful.
She sounds like a Monty Python lady. She sounds like Graham Chapman or someone doing she's like, well, says I'll be feeling much better soon.
Yeah, that was her whole arc is crazy, and it leads to one of the grossest scenes I think in cinematic history is when at the end where he's trying to escape, he bumbles into her funeral during a sequence where he doesn't know what's real and what's not, and she has literally just turned into gelatinous goo,
falls all over
dumps out all over the floor. Yeah, and you see there's bones in there that are still sort of solid, but the rest of it is all just God, that scene freaks me out every single time.
It's so gross. Horrifying, man. That's so fucking gross. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he turns around and falls backwards into the coffin. Oh, so bad. But that sort of leads to the controversy over Brazil with the different cuts of the movie. I know originally we were going to talk about maybe watching both cuts, but I won't force anybody to do that. But there is the UK cut, which I think is 140 something minutes, came out in the early part of 1985. And then there was a question of how will it get released in the United States? And so the studios got a hold of it, and there was this big battle because they just thought it was too depressing and no one would get it and too much. And so they got a team of editors and sliced it down to a 90-minute, ready for TV movie with a completely different ending where basically Sam is not imagining all those things at the end, and he really does. Yeah, he gets away. He ends up on a farm with Jill.
Yeah,
and the movie ends with him flying up into the sky as Icarus, and then it cuts, and then that's it, and then they play the music, and it's a completely different movie altogether. That's not the only thing they changed. They cut it down to 90 minutes. So they cut a lot and they rearranged things and put them in different order. And so obviously Terry Gilliam was just insanely angry over this whole thing, and went to, like, an ad campaign of Variety, taking out full page ads, getting Robert De Niro to like do interviews and like put all this pressure on the studios in order to like release his version of the film, which eventually he was successful at. I just think it's one of like the more interesting like tales of Hollywood, of like what kind of goes on behind the scenes and how you can change a movie drastically just by editing the crap out of it.
It's so funny to me because like they work so hard to come out with a movie that nobody would like, because if you liked the movie leading up to the ending, you would not like a false happy ending tacked on to, like, and if you
You're like, what the hell?
and if
just
you liked
happened?
the ending of the movie, no way in hell you'd still be watching it if you after the first, hour and 15 minutes, 20 minutes of it or whatever from the 90-minute cut. Like, you'd be like, this movie's depressing and sucks and it's scary and I'm leaving. So like, tacking a happy ending onto this movie is just like pleasing no one, It's so
I don't know if it
stupid.
would have bothered me though. Like, I'm thinking of it as upon first watch, I watched the director's cut. So it turns out, yes, he's being tortured, and he ends up falling into all that thing, and he ends up with Jill in the end in the hills, and then it cuts back to him that he's like too far gone and mentally, because he's been tortured. I like both versions in a sense. Like, I prefer that he's still being tortured and he's just too far gone. Like, that's my preferred ending.
Yeah.
But when I thought maybe it was just ending with him with her, I was like, okay, that's not bad. Like, because the whole movie's fanciful in a weird way, and like you're just like, oh, okay, did I, the whole thing was like falling into a coffin and ending up in the truck, and it just seems totally out of bounds anyways. And you're like, okay, maybe he gets the girl in the end.
Yeah.
So
it progressed and got crazier and crazier. Like, initially he was being rescued by Robert De Niro,
which was
like,
plausible.
Like, all the commandos came down.
Yeah. You're like, okay, this could happen.
And it keeps getting further and further. And then Robert De Niro gets
wrapped up in
swept
paper.
up in a tornado of paper, and then he just disappears.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you're like, okay, this is...
Once De Niro
this is not
turns
real,
into scattered papers and he disappears, you're like, okay, this is... But there were a bunch of moments.
But to me, that was
before
totally plausible. Like, it's just like the way this whole thing is going is like, what's it different? I mean, I'll say this. I messaged you guys about an hour in, and I was like, so I'm an hour in and I still have no idea what this fucking movie's about. And and I'm fine. I was fine with that, but I think I was thinking that there was a point at first. Like, it wasn't just like a fantasy kind of thing, like it didn't like there's a point, I get that, but I thought like there was going to be some sort of more like protagonist type thing, and the evil, big brother kind of thing, but it was really just kind of his struggle with his whatever, and I guess a better way to put it is kind of just like a sci-fi fantasy in a weird way, and it plays out a certain way, but I enjoyed it. But I think the first part I went in going, okay, why is he flying? Okay, why is he fighting the fucking thing? Like, I thought all these things were going to have reasoning behind them. Like, it just was, nope, he's dreaming. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. I just was kind of looking for some points, but
originally they had all those dream sequence things that were interspersed throughout the movie. Originally, that was the opening scene of the movie, and all of them were together. So you see this entire thing where he's soaring, he sees her in the cloud, he kisses her, the samurai warrior who's like 25 feet tall or whatever comes out, and like all this crap.
Is there a cut where they're all together?
That's supposed to be the opening scene. And then they were like,
all of that at one time?
That would have been like 20 minutes
so
long.
And then they were like, hey, why don't we use it to fill the gaps between, chapters essentially in this movie? The only way that I think it makes sense at the beginning is because you get a dream sequence bookending the movie, where you have a dream sequence at the beginning, a dream sequence at the end, and in between is what really happened. For me, it made me question how much of it ever happened at all, because the girl in his dream is exactly the girl that he sees in real life. So if it was a blonde woman in a cage and then he sees someone that looks like her in real life, and he's like, oh, it's the woman from my dreams, but it isn't. That's one thing. And then you're like, okay, this guy is just searching for something. But in the dream sequence, it's fucking her. So then you're like, was this guy ever awake? You know, was the entire movie him being tortured and coming up with all this shit to keep his mind occupied, which is unsatisfying to me. I hate those where they have you invest in a movie and then in the end they're like, the entire thing was fake and the person was asleep or dead. And you're like, kind of fuck you, man. You know.
I mean, it's a good tool for this where he's being tortured and he's losing grasp on reality and you're getting a window into that. And you're tricked for a minute. It's kind of like Occurrence at Elk Creek where he's, you know, he thinks he's running away and he's escaping, but really he's on the cutting table and he's slowly dying. Which I think it's effective when it's done right. And I felt like it was effective in this movie as well.
Because it's not like a whole, they don't do it as a kind of a gimmick. It makes sense in the torturing of him. And I like that it's his friend is doing the torture, and then the guy in the wheelchair is there as well, which is kind of funny.
Oh, the fucking baby mask.
We talk about the
baby mask. Jesus Christ. That Michael Palin
the
wears.
whole scene. So when he Michael Palin, when Sam meets up with him in his office because he's trying to track down Jill, comes in on him like while he's working, and he's got blood, all like a handprint, and there's the secretary in the front has got the ear piece in.
I like they have a stenographer for the torture. That's
She's
really
just
funny.
Literally typing out like onomatopoeia, like "ow, oh God, no, Jesus Christ,
no more." Yeah, but that whole scene where he runs into him and he's like, "Oh, because they're friends from the past, and now they're like sort of colleagues, and they have this like rapport about them." But he's caught him in the middle of like one of the most inhuman things a person can do, torturing another human being to death. And also, it's bring your daughter to work day, and there's his baby.
He doesn't even know which daughter.
One of his triplets.
He's like, I don't know, whatever.
Which you have no idea which one it is. And she's just hanging out in his office while he's in another room murdering people for a living.
Yeah.
For the government. So it's such a dark, depressing movie that I love to like watch every couple of years to go back to because it's so fucked up.
That scene with the daughter in the room produces my favorite line in this movie, where he gives him a suit to put on, like, and he like leaves, and he leaves his little daughter there. The little girl says, "Put it on, big boy. I won't look at your willy." And that was Terry Gilliam's daughter, who played that kid.
Oh, was it really?
We gave her that line.
That's fine.
I had to rewind that because I was like, what did she say? Like, because it's like, as he's like, then it cuts to him outside. And you're like, wait, what?
Layers of fucked upness just keep getting put on there.
But that scene where Jack actually goes to torture him, and he comes in with a fucking baby mask into that giant, like, crazy, like, volcano room or whatever the hell, like, Matrix meets a volcano.
It looked like the inside of one of those nuclear cooling towers.
It looked like a James Bond scenario.
Like it had to have been filmed in one of those,
But when he comes in with a fucking baby mask and like Jonathan Pryce's character knows it's him and he's like, Jack, no, you can't. And he's like looking around for like, who's going to get me the fuck out of this? But he has to go through with it anyway. That scene is a killer, man. Shit. And I don't know that he actually ever tortures him because like Terry Gilliam says that the movie is supposed to have a happy ending because Jonathan Pryce's character dreams his way out of this horrible life, basically. Like, you know, his imagination takes over his mind and snaps him from reality.
He escapes his body.
And when you see him, when Helpman and Jack are looking at him in the chair at the very end, near the very end, he doesn't have a spot of blood on him. He doesn't have anything messed up. Jack doesn't have any spots of blood on him. He's unblemished. So it looks like he went to torture him.
His mind just cracked.
He went to torture him, and then he just fucking had a psychic break, and that was it. And like that's his only way.
He's certainly
that's obviously the best outcome for everybody.
He's certainly on edge the whole movie. Like he's just, he makes me anxious watching this. He's freaking out for 2 hours.
So Brian, did you have any scenes that you particularly liked or disliked in this?
Yeah. Like I said, I really enjoyed the dinner scene. I thought that was really well done. It's, you know, very dark comedy. Salt. That was good. I love the way they did the Ministry of my God, Ministry of Information.
Yeah,
Information retrieval. Or,
information retrieval, where the head guy's just walking across the halls and everyone's just following him. He's like, yes, no.
Oh yeah,
the choreographer on that was great, and the scene with when he finally gets his office and his office mate next door, the table gag with the desk go plugged back and forth.
Mr. Lime,
like. Yeah, and him and his computer that he clearly doesn't know fucking how to use. He's like, I'm a whiz.
I'm a whiz at it. And he's like, you've got to turn it on. And he's like, oh yeah.
And he's like, click, just typing. He's like, oh.
He's like a kid, just like learning how to type for the first time.
I love the idea that the budget cuts that they must have had to gone through to make that decision to split the room and have one desk. They can only afford one desk. They cut the hole just right, and it moves. Like it's just absolutely insane. Like, well done.
So I enjoyed those ones, and I thought, like, I love the set design and the vibe. It's funny, as I was watching, I kept thinking of other movies this reminded me of, or I guess essentially were influenced by. And I thought of like City of the Lost Children looks a lot like this, and I also thought Super Mario Brothers, that movie that wasn't Bob Hoskins also in, and then and some people, and it's funny, and I saw those too. Then I went and did my, super in-depth research on this movie on Wikipedia, and it was like it mentions those two movies in it as like influences. Like, oh shit, it did. Yeah, I was like, it looks just. You can definitely tell that there's that vibe that's kind of taken from, this movie. I love that. I love the way the sets were done. It was really cool, especially like the big walkways, the big stairwells leading up to the buildings, and you go inside the
bottomless
buildings
pits down to
these huge like empty spaces. It was just like one person in them, and it was really very like 1984-esque. Which I was gonna say. I'm going to tangent this and feel free to edit this out, but it was really funny. A long time ago, I was at a Barnes and Noble, and I was walking around in the fiction section, and there was like a teenager, and he was with his girl. I assumed because his girlfriend or this girl he was trying to impress, and for some reason, the 1984 came up, and he was like, "Oh, this is my favorite book." And which like it feels like 90% of high schoolers 1984 for some reason is their favorite book. So
because they've read 4 books. That's one of them.
They've read 2 other books. Lord of the Flies is the other one.
It's Lord of the Flies. Anthem by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand, whatever.
So, and she's like, "Oh, what's that about?" And he's like, "Oh, it's just so Orwellian." And I was in one aisle over, and I was just like kind of laughing. I was like, "You just said the author's name, and that's a thing." Like, oh, it's just you just got to read it. It's just so Orwellian. I was just like sick.
It's like you went to high school with George Orwell. Yeah, it's like my buddy Orwell. It's like it's all the stuff that he writes.
I was like, is that an adjective? Like, is that real? Can you just say that about things? Anyways, so that just vaguely pops. Anytime I think of 1984, I think of that kid being like. But like I said, that's where I was searching for. Like, is there symbolism in the samurai fight scene? Like. The damsel in distress, like, is this I didn't know it was a dream sequence. I didn't get far enough to know that, but I was like, what the fuck is going on here? So I think as I got past the hour mark and it was like, okay, whatever, it's him dreaming, it's a fantasy, and he's gonna meet the girl and all that sort of stuff. But you can imagine only seeing like 25 minutes of this being like, what the hell? You got Robert De Niro showing up like with a fucking face mask to fix tubes, and I'm like, oh, okay.
That's why a 90-minute version of this is such a terrible idea, because you have to slice and dice so much important shit out of this thing to get that, right? It wouldn't make any fucking sense. I can see why the
majority of people would not like this movie at all.
Yeah, I can see that as well.
Yeah, oh, totally, yeah.
I mean, it flopped, right? I mean,
originally. Well, I mean, it's a cult hit. It is widely.
That just means it was just no one saw it.
But like critically, it's also included on like a ton of lists for like
critics loved it, yeah.
Not my friend Roger Ebert.
No, he
gave it 2 out of 4 stars.
I think he called it production overkill and only has one idea, and being overwhelmed by technology and beats it to death.
I saw his review, the Siskel and Ebert video of this before I watched this movie for this podcast, and because I was like, when I saw this movie, I didn't like it back in the day, man. I saw it and I was expecting Monty Python stuff, and I was like, what the hell is this? And why is it called Brazil? And fuck this shit, man. And So when you announced it for this, I was like, crap, I'll watch it, but I'm not excited about it. And I watched the Siskel and Ebert review, and they were both pretty negative about it, but Ebert was just like, this movie makes no sense, and there's just explosions everywhere. If there had been fewer explosions and more sense and more of a story, I would have liked it. And then Siskel was like, yeah, I guess. They didn't know what the fuck the movie was about. So I was like, okay, they didn't know what it was about either. I'm going to be confused by this movie. But I was not.
But do you think now that I can see, maybe that's kind of my viewpoint, and if you're looking at it from 1985, but I think enough time has passed, say 30 years, and enough more bizarre and weird movies have come out that sort of makes this one does that make sense? Like it's like you've seen so many other movies like The Matrix or any other sort of dystopian type movies that, I've mentioned City Lost Children, Delicatessen, all these things that are kind of out there and that's become more acceptable. And now you go back and watch a movie like this and it does not seem that out of context or out of whack. So I imagine seeing this in 1985 when there's not a huge, a lot of directors doing stuff like this. And I think it's been done a lot more now.
I didn't see it in 1985. I don't think. I don't think I saw it until like I was maybe like high school. I had already I grew up on Time Bandits and Baron Munchausen. Like those were like staples in my household. Seeing them dozens and dozens of times. So I was already like sort of prepared for Terry Gilliam by the time I saw like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And so none of that really bothered me. Like it actually like kind of attracted me to this movie is because it's got that Terry Gilliam crazy ass kludgy feel, where so much time and effort we have obsessing over like the tiniest little details.
I know you're a big Terry Gilliam fan. You'll have to remind me to watch Fear and Loathing, because I remember that being a literal like unwatchable.
Really?
I think I didn't see it.
I think I got 20 minutes in. I was just like, this is fucking terrible.
At the time, I was reading a lot of Hunter S. Thompson, and when the movie came out, I was
feel like maybe I should give it another shot because I don't remember knowing that it was Terry Gilliam, because I like 12 Monkeys and some of his other films. It's just weird. I just remember watching that being like, this is so bad. But again, maybe it's kind of a consequence like this, like time and a place.
I do like 12 Monkeys more than Brazil. 12 Monkeys is also in like my list of like top movies ever. So
you like that more than Brazil?
Again, yeah.
You like that more than 1984 and a half?
As a title or as a movie?
No, I'm just joking. I'm trying to make 1984 and a half happen.
Stop it. It's not going
to try to make that. Yeah. But yeah, I think like the movie deserves a better title because I think it's so fucking imaginative and there's so many goddamn brilliant little strokes here and there. I mean, like when he goes to, when he follows Jill into where she
Sam and Jill, the legendary journeys.
Yeah. When she's going in that weird warehouse thing to pick up a package and there's like a fire and he's trying to follow her and he walks through this room and they're like 12 guys in like full body fire suits playing volleyball with like flames all around them. And I was like,
fucking Harkonnens.
Fuck. Yeah. Like it's just neat and unexplainable. And like when he goes to get his job for the front desk and that weird stone-faced guy is talking to him and he's like saying, do you need to see my ID? And the guy says no, but they're standing way apart from each other.
You.
And there's the shadow of him. Sam's shadow is sitting on the desk, like between the two of them. And it's like equidistant between these two guys. And it's like, he's this moment where he's kind of like selling his soul to follow this woman. And it's just shit like that. It's not by accident, like this guy is such an attention to detail. He pulls so many weird moments that aren't just for the sake of being weird. They're like, he knows what he's doing the whole fucking time. None of it's by accident.
Even the little frou-frou dogs that have the tape over their buttholes.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I do think Jonathan Pryce is great in this. Like he carries the film, and I wish there was more. Like Ian Holm, the boss was great.
Yeah,
he's like
Ian
this
Holm
little weakling,
great.
and he's so dependent on him.
Yeah.
He's so great at it. and
What a pathetic
he doesn't know what to
creature.
do when the check comes back, and he's so scared all the time.
Yeah.
And he pounds the table and like breaks his own wrist.
Yeah, that's where he's like,
So
"Can you
good.
sign it for me? I'm a pathetic creature. I don't know what to do without you."
So good. He's like, I didn't turn down the promotion. I signed it for you. He's like, what?
I thought the scene where he finally consummates the relationship with Jill, right? Where they finally have sex after all this time, where he's probably seems like he's never kissed someone in his entire life. I thought it was a strangely dreamlike sequence, right? Like she kind of inadvertently recreates the dream that he had of her. She puts the wig. She has no idea, right? Like she doesn't know that in the dream she has a blonde wig and that she's behind this muslin curtain type stuff. But she ends up sort of recreating it for him. And that's one thing I wondered why they did that. Like why do you think they had that scene play out like that?
I feel like that was the moment where, everything that comes after notwithstanding, the audience, you're supposed to believe the guy gets the girl. Like everything's working out, but it's only leading up to them pulling the rug out from under you. So I think it was just like connecting that his dreams are really coming true. Like, and there's some sort of like ESP or future telling that he was able to like, make it all happen through his sheer, grit and getting the promotion or taking the promotion that he didn't really want in order to like track her down. And he made it all happen. But in the end, it doesn't work out. He wasn't.
And it's interesting.
Smart enough or fast enough to escape the law.
Yeah. It's interesting because like when they finally flop on the bed, and actually that's a pretty funny line where he's like, "You're dead, I've killed you." And she's like, "Care for a little necrophilia?" I was like, that's pretty funny. It's like, weird but funny. But like, and they cut to the bed, they cut to an above shot of the bed, and all this
with this
fabric like wraps around itself.
Yeah, it was kind of womb-like.
It's womb-like. It also, to me, it was like another aperture, like another tube, like closing, where they're just getting digested again or something.
It's a good shot. It's a really good shot.
It is. It's really interesting. And again, I feel like nothing this guy does as a director is by accident. And whether you know the reason for it or not, you know that there is a reason for it. It isn't just like random shit happening.
That is a good scene. Yeah. I will say my favorite scene, I think, in the entire movie, which is, it's not like a super special scene from like a cinematic viewpoint. It's like a performance, like the performance that was given is just really heart wrenching, is when Sam goes to meet Buttle's widow.
Oh God.
And get the paper
like
sign.
catatonic.
Like, what have you done with his body? Like the way she moans it out there. Like that is such a hell of a performance.
Oh
like,
my God.
She really sold it that she like,
what have you done with this body? My husband's body.
Yeah, that
shit.
That was Oscar worthy.
She turns into a ghoul.
She appears to him later in like
creatures.
little like imagination sequences saying the same thing. Like I think she's at the funeral, that imagined funeral.
Oh, really?
I think she's one of the people there. If I'm not remembering,
I know she turns into like one of those like clothed little creature people.
Oh,
Or she's like,
babyface.
so she's in
dream
chains,
sequence.
like she's enslaved by those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to haunt him for his sins.
Yeah, that's horrifying. And the kid attacks him and stuff. And he's like, and he's such an ass. He just comes in there and he's like, I have to just give you a check. And he's like, I don't have to be here, I'm just being nice, showing up and giving you these checks. And like nothing that he does is actually like meant to help anyone other than himself. He meets this girl and he obsesses about this girl, and everything he does from that point on, after he sees her in the camera, is just his own self-interest being played out again and again and again. He just wants this woman. He wants this dream. He needs this outlet. It doesn't matter who she is, really. Like, he's going to graft this woman onto whatever, if it was dark-haired woman with, green eyes in his dream. He'd find a dark-haired woman with green eyes and graft her into his life. So like none of the things he does are altruistic. They're all self-involved, and they all are working toward this outlet that he can never really achieve. Like he can never really achieve this dream or happiness or anything that he really wants in the society.
I think that's one of the reasons I really like this movie, and I think that's the message that Terry Gilliam is trying to get across, or at least the message I take from it, is that this bureaucracy, this giant machine, it turns the cogs, like it takes your humanity away in various ways. And what we're seeing is all these different characters have their humanity just completely degraded in various horrible forms, from one end of the spectrum where Sam's just a cog and he can't feel any real feeling for people who have fucking died, to Jack, who's actively torturing and murdering people for a living, and it doesn't really seem to bother him that much. It's a depressing film, again, but it's one that I think has a really powerful message.
And this is what fascist governments do when they take over. In the early stages of fascist governments, and you see this again and again from Eastern Europe to South America to Central America, everywhere that it happens, what they do is they round up and either expel or kill the artists. It's like poets, especially.
Oh, fuck. Podcast over, guys. We got to burn this shit.
Fascist dictators are terrified of poets. It's something that it's always comes up. It's always fascinating to me. They're terrified of poets, but especially anyone who is a fiction writer, a humorist, a dancer, an actor. Yeah. These people are always rounded up and expelled or killed or imprisoned, by fascist dictatorships. So like this guy is never going to have the outcome he wants, the life he wants, the outlet he wants. It's never going to happen. There is not a place for a dreamer or an artist in the society whatsoever. Like you can be a consumer or a worker, and that's it. Like you can be an elite consumer with weird food and, fancy gifts, or you can toil away at some horrible job and just die eventually.
Well, on that horribly uplifting note there, let's grade this sucker. So on the scale of bureaucracy, where would you rate this? Would it be a Saturday trapped at the DMV in Tampa, Florida? Or would it be sunrise over the Grand Canyon courtesy of the National Park Service? Which bureaucratic monolith would this fall into? Brian, go first as the newbie to this film.
Yeah, I'll take the national park scenic route.
Nice.
I think the best description I saw, and I probably should have wrote down which critics said this, that I think makes it a very good description that is kind of, if you could say in a nutshell, like saying this movie's sort of vision is, this is probably what people in the 40s would think the future looks like. It's like tubes and just screens and things. They probably couldn't even envision, computers and stuff. But it's weird because even their computers were just typewriters with a screen in front of it. So
a teeny little screen with a magnifying glass.
Well, yeah, and a magnifying glass. Yeah,
and it was like this. It was like this. Cool. Everything is kind of like steampunk, which is now mashup-y kind of analog and digital smashed together and all that kind of stuff. But once I got it, I think it's super creative and I love the visuals in it. I thought it was a good story. Like I didn't know what kind of movie it was going to be at first. Like, you just kind of go into it like, yeah, whatever, I'll let this play. Like, I feel like when we do stuff like this, you're kind of watching it on a I probably procrastinate and I say watching this on a timeline, but it's not something where it's incredibly compelling the first 30, 45 minutes. It's kind of a longer movie, so you kind of have to let it play out. Whereas like it's something that's kind of catches you right away and you're like, okay, I'm into this. So I really enjoyed it, actually. I do think it is a film where if you have the benefit of seeing it multiple times, I agree. I think I would have picked up on more. and been more patient with it instead of being like, shit, I got to talk about this in 2 hours. Like, I got to get through this, because it kind of sets a set of anxiety to be like, do I understand what's happening? As opposed to having seen this maybe 20 times, and you can kind of pick up on little fun things about it. So
we appreciate your honesty.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're doing letters, but yeah, if we're just doing the national park thing, I'm going, I think it's worth a watch. I feel like we always do the fake scale and then we end up going back to regular grades. So I don't know what you want me to do.
No, we
always give it a regular grade.
I always give it a regular grade. I think we give it regular grades. Like Joshua comes up with that scale and then we just give it a grade anyway.
It's a gimmick.
Okay. It's a gimmick, exactly. Yeah,
I like to do it.
Okay,
letter grade. Man, I think it could be an A if I spent more time with it.
Really?
I think, yeah, because I like everything that's in it. I like weird movies. And I like the messaging is I love the anti-bureaucracy and, you know, the consumerism, and it's kind of the finger at the man type shit. But I'm going to give it a B+.
Solid.
B+ for Brian.
Yeah. B for Brazil. Greg.
B for Brazil.
No, we're not.
Yeah, so like I said, I saw this in the 80s, probably 85, 86 or something like that. And I was a big Monty Python fan. And I was like, oh, Monty Python guy, he made a movie. I'm going to see the movie. And I watched it and was like, what the fuck is this? You know, like, this is just not funny and like just weird and grimy and dark. And it makes me feel bad in my soul. I don't like it. And I completely blocked it out of my memory and never went back to it and took a look at it again. And this is why, for me, the podcast is useful, because sometimes it's something you've never seen before and you experience it for the first time. Sometimes it's something that you already know or you think you know, and you get to see it again. And I would not have come back to this movie at all on my own. But coming back to this movie, especially after seeing the Siskel and Ebert review where they were like, it doesn't make sense and it's just all bombs. God damn it. It's fucking brilliant, man. It's a brilliant fucking movie. Everything about it is purposeful. It's got loads to say about, you know, the nature of love and art and dreams in an oppressive society, which, you know, in most ways, most societies are oppressive in at least some ways. You know, America has its oppression. You know, the Soviet Union certainly did. Totalitarian government.
That or living in a cave.
Yeah. And like I said, whether you understand it or not, nothing this guy does is purposeless. And there are so many fucking details in this movie. And just endless creativity. It just goes on and on and on. And you're like, how the fuck did somebody come up with this much shit to look at and say and do in one movie? And to think that someone wanted to cut this down to 90 minutes is a fucking travesty. Like, it's just, what idiot thought that would be a good idea? Because it's so goddamn brilliant. I gotta say, man, I'm giving it a fucking A+. It's the only one I've ever given. I think it's a genius fucking movie. Like a genius movie.
Yay!
I've gone up to an A and it been like, A-. That's usually as far as I will go. But like, it has to be fucking extra, you know, like it can't just be a really good movie. It has to be extra to get that. And this movie is just unbelievable.
I'm super happy on that list.
I think for me, and I'll be curious to think, I think this movie benefits me being a bit older. I don't know.
Definitely.
So Josh was like, "Oh, you know, I watched this when I was 4.5, and it made sense." But
that's not what I said.
Yeah, I feel like you know, he's like, "Oh, I popped out of the womb with a Terry Gilliam T-shirt on." But I feel like it definitely helped me being a bit older to be patient and kind of to pick up on a lot more of the themes that's happening in this. I mean, not to say I can see myself liking this at 20, but being a little bit older, I think I'd had more patience with it and I see a bit more to it. So I'm glad I kind of saw it as when I was like a bit older and not Yeah, I think it helps in terms of like my perspective on this one. We'll let you talk now about your beloved Brazil.
No, I'm going to keep it short, man. I'm not going to belabor the point. Yeah, it's an A+ for me. I love this film. That's why I put it on the list when I found out that Brian hadn't seen it. Yeah, I did not come out of the womb wearing a Terry Gilliam t-shirt.
You wish you did, though.
Clearly, it was a Frank Herbert t-shirt. Duh.
It had a sandworm on it. I heart sandworms.
Sleeper has awakened, Mom.
That's like again and again. Yeah, 16 times a night the sleeper awoke.
So, yeah, when I first saw this, it must have been high school or college. I don't remember exactly when, but it really clicked with me. I am not going to pretend I understood every facet of it. Obviously, I didn't even put any real thought into what the title meant. But that's one of the reasons I really enjoy doing this podcast with you guys, is because everybody brings up stuff, and I had never really had an opportunity to sit down and talk to someone about the movie Brazil for this length of time. It's always just been in passing, like, oh, you should see that movie. I really enjoy it for X, Y, and Z. And that's it. And this is like really the only outlet where I think we can get together and like hone in on a subject and focus on it and like shoot the shit about it. And so I really enjoy this aspect of us having this podcast together. So, yeah, I give it an A+. I dig Terry Gilliam as a director. I've seen most of his work. I think there's some latter day stuff that I still haven't gotten around to, but definitely all of his earlier work I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, so A+. That's Brazil, baby. That's Brazil.
That might be one of our highest ranking movies so far.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah, I like these discussions too, because like we'll watch a movie and I'll try to talk to my wife about it. She's like, I don't want to talk about the movie. Like I don't want to like delve into like what your problems were with issues and what you thought was brilliant. Like I just want to consume a thing and then move on. And I'm like, that is so not me.
He calls central services, but they don't pick up. And she's like, shut the fuck up.
Okay, so what are we?
Archibald intercepts it.
What are we doing next week?
This is from the roots of my geeky childhood as well, where I grew up loving monster movies. Coming from Boston, they had Creature double feature on every week. I think it was Saturday. They would play back to back old black and white monster movies like Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, Godzilla versus
fucking
Mothra,
mutants coming out of the water.
Fucking mutants everywhere, dude. And I love those movies, and I would draw pictures of the dinosaurs and monsters when I was a kid. And so this is something I've followed my entire life. The story of Godzilla, or Gojira, as he is known in the original Japanese word. And they have a new movie out. Not all the Godzilla movies are good, and some of the old ones are trash, but they have Godzilla -1, which is a new movie that came out in 2023. It's still in theaters, so we're gonna say spoiler alerts ahead when we review it. But it's Godzilla in the aftermath of World War II. So like at the very end of World War II, and in the aftermath, the ensuing couple of years after it, where Japan is in ruins, and it is done from the point of view of the Japanese people that were left with the ruins of World War II. And then on top of that, fucking Godzilla comes when they're cleaning up the waste of the nuclear bombs and everything else.
Catch a
fucking
break.
Godzilla comes and makes it even worse. So Godzilla -1, it's still out there, but we're all gonna watch it and talk about it
Next time on Rabbit Fighters, Godzilla -1. See you next week.
Godzilla -1.
Spiders buzz to work. Reading cartoons in Newsweek magazine. Listening to Massive Attack.
You just got to read it. It's just so Orwellian. I was just like, sick.